just to give you an idea of how this session's going to go, first of all, we're all going to profile the journal that we curate. Just 5 minutes or so. I mean, and then we can get into more detail later on. And then we've got about 5 different sections that we're going to do. And at the end of each section, we're going to have questions. So we'll talk for a bit and then come back and ask anything. It's going to be quite interactive, we hope. So the sections are, first we're going to ask the big question of why are journals important, you know, like big picture stuff. And then we'll go a little bit into more detail about the nuts and bolts of journals, editors' jobs, editorial process, and a little bit of advice for prospective authors, so a bit of encouragement as well. Then we'll do some challenges, things like AI, digital publishing, the cost of print and postage is astronomical these days. And then finally, looking ahead, the promise part of it, the opportunities about supporting traditional East Asian medicine, and therefore our patients, at the end of the day, helping them. So first of all, I would like to just introduce you to the panel. On my left, I have Steve Woodley, who is the editor of the RCHM Journal. And then we've got Jasmine Udine Ejom. And then Mike Cummins, who is editor-in-chief at the BMAS journal Acupuncture in Medicine. And then we have Wu Di, who looks after the ATCM journal, and he's just got in from a terrible traffic jam, so be gentle with him. So here we go. I'm going to pass straight on to Steve to tell us about the RCHM journal.
Okay, well, it does pretty much what it says. It's the Journal for the Register of Chinese Herbal Medicine. We are quite unique in that we're one of the only journals that specifically focuses on Chinese herbal medicine rather than herbal medicine generally or Chinese medicine as a whole. And, well, we publish almost anything that's of interest to our members that is related to the practice of Chinese herbal medicine.
Right. Ejom, some of you have already heard me speak about Ejom on Friday, but I'll just many of you don't know the history. I mean, Ejom predates the creation of the BACC, and 5 associations that met as a forum in the Council for Acupuncture, the BACC sort of precursor, decided that they would give up, some of the associations produce their own journals, which are really sort of alumni society journals. You know, the colleges, the society was an alumni society, and they produced their own journals. 3 of them did this. And they decided that they would give up their journals in order to produce a common journal as a way of expressing greater unity within the profession. And so that's how Ejom was born. We decided to call it the European Journal of Oriental Medicine, hoping that we would be a focus for Europe at the time, because we were in the EU, and in 1993 was the year of the Treaty of Maastricht, and in this treaty there was going to be greater cooperation beyond economic cooperation between countries, and we thought that legislation may affect education more broadly. So we felt that we needed to have a European focus. And as time went on, that European focus got more and more concentrated to more political union. But we, obviously, as that began to happen, diverged from Europe. So although we still have the title and we still aspire to be a forum for a wider group within Europe, we realized that, you know, we were always mainly going to attract English-speaking authors. The journal is a little bit different in as much as it is a Chinese medicine journal, or traditional East medicine journal, but we would like to go beyond just the scope of clinical cases and evidence and so to encompass the broader aspects of being a practitioner, of education, history, philosophy, anthropology, and also the context of East Asian medicine across East Asia. So where Chinese medicine has flowered with indigenous medicines of Japan, Korea, and so on, and how that interfaces, in order to broaden the perspective of practitioners. So I'm going to stop there because
can I just ask details like whether it's peer-reviewed, indexed?
It's certainly peer-reviewed. It's not indexed. It's very hard to get indexing for the humanities space that we kind of occupy, but it is definitely peer-reviewed. Yeah.
And it's BACC members that get it.
BACC members have it, well, because you pay for it, you get it. It's now gone digital. Up until 2019, it was print, but we're going to discuss all these things in future topics in terms of cost. So we are digital. And the major change that's happening with EJOM, having been a separate company most of its life, although it was predominantly funded by the BACC plus advertising and money from subscriptions, we're coming back inside the BACC, reintegrating into the parent company, our main financier, mainly actually to broaden the possibilities of its expansion. It became actually increasingly difficult to function as a separate body with the funding that we had, and also the organizational capabilities that we had, which we couldn't expand on our current funding. And so going back into the BACC, we have much wider access to the whole staff team to be able to promote the journal, and also to reflect in many ways the aspirations and philosophy of the BACC, but at the same time be absolutely rigorous about editorial independence.
Afternoon, everyone. So I represent Acupuncture in Medicine, which is the journal of the British Medical Acupuncture Society, which was set up in 1980. The main objective of the society, it's a charity, the main objective is to encourage the use and scientific evaluation of acupuncture for the public benefit. So a couple of years later, the first issue of the journal was published, I think, 83. And so it has a similar mission in that sense, but we do focus more on the neurophysiological perspective to specifically acupuncture research. It was a journal that supported the membership to start with. It was self-published for many years. I took over, not by choice. Mike, we'll do that, won't we, Mike? Said a senior member on the board. We'll do that, won't we, Mike? Which meant that's when I got involved in editing the journal in 1999. We were self-published, and I used to sit next to a page setter for a week at a time for each issue. We've gone through various iterations, and I've had some very good editors-in-chief for the last 2 decades. And we were published by BMJ Group and then Sage. We're still in paper, but we're essentially online for most people only, which saved us huge amounts of money recently. We're listed on lots of things. Impact factor is 2.6.
Oh, that's quite good.
Revenues from the journal keep the BMS afloat over COVID, for example, or part helped to do so.
So who gets it? BMS members and can subscribe as well?
So online free sort of access to the whole copy of the journal goes to a number of different groups that subscribe, including our members, of course, so veterinary groups, some various others, and a huge via consortia sales under SAGE, it goes to whoever buys SAGE journals, they get access, which is lots and lots of institutions around the world.
It's quick. Hello, everyone. My name is Woody. I just looked at my badge and it said ATCM representative, but I'm a BIAXI member myself as well. So today I just represent the Journal of Chinese Medicine and Acupuncture, which is ATCM journal. ATCM was established in 1994, and the journal started a year after 1995. At the very beginning, ATCM only had about 30 to 40 members, very small number of people, but it's quite ambitious. They decided to start a journal. And there's a bit interesting background because in the early days, most members, before they came to the UK, they were already senior Chinese doctors working in the busy hospital or senior researchers working in the institute. But when they came to the UK, the life just changed massively from a busy hospital to a 10 square meter small treatment room. So they want to, so that's why at the very beginning, they defined the journal or positioned the journal as an academic journal. Pretty ambitious, although they only have 30, 40 people. And it has been like this ever since. And also, I think the purpose of the journal is to serve the member. Because of this background of the members, I think this journal serves a platform for people to band together academically and give people a sense of belonging, give a sense of attachment. I think that's the main purpose of the journal. And we have certain sessions in each issue. We publish 2 issues every year, and mainly the theoretical reflections, studies, and research development, and clinical case studies, and all these, and also general reflections on TCM. So we are different from my colleagues here because we are totally run by volunteers, just like our council. Yes, all by volunteers. None of our editors are professional editors. So for the last 30 years, we didn't miss any issue. We published 2 issues every year. We are quite proud of that. But from the journal concept of journal itself, and we need a lot to learn from my colleagues. Yeah, I think to give you a best idea of what the journal is doing, at the moment we are editing our current journal, which will release in a few days' time. I just read the table of content, what we have in this issue, so you can have a rough idea what we are doing. And a recent advancement of the mechanisms of acupuncture treatment on chronic insomnia disorder, that's in English, and clinical source and application analysis of Bagua abdominal acupuncture in treating depression. So that's in both Chinese and English. And treating depression using microneedling and through pulse regulation. So that's in Chinese. Introduction of Tiaoheng Chinese medicine, a new holistic diagnosis and treatment paradigm of Chinese medicine. That's in both Chinese and English. And modified 血府逐玉 decoction combined with 六味地黄 concoction for refractory insomnia after breast cancer surgery. So that's in both Chinese and English. What else? TCM treatment of psoriasis based on clinical cases. That's in Chinese. That's from Dr. Zhu. He's sitting there. And there is an English version as well, but there's no space for this issue, so we'll probably publish the next one. And the next one is the clinical application of 炙甘草 decoction in both Chinese and English. And the last one, the clinical significance of the nourishing in and enriched blood formula series in treatment, reflection on studying Danxi school and theory of nourish in. That's from our fellow member, Dr. Dan Jiang. She's also published one for fertility, as well. and that's in Chinese. And also sometimes we invite people from different areas for different special topics. For example, at the moment we are applying for accreditation from PSA, so we try to promote members' awareness for some important topics. This time we have from our PPC committee of the council, there's a professional boundaries in traditional Chinese medicine practice, ethical principles, regulatory context, and fitness to practice. So that's basically to promote the members' awareness of important issues. And for the first 10 years of the publication, the journal was all published in Chinese because most members were Chinese. I think from 20 years ago until now, the journal was in bilingual, just some articles in Chinese, some in English, and some in both. And so that's about it. Oh, we are in the journey of the peer review, partially, I would say, not systematically, but we have an advisory board formed by our academic committee and research committee of the council to control the quality of the article. And this probably we can talk about later. The peer review is very interesting thing, how you balance to attract people to make a contribution and also not to put people off. Yeah.
Okay,
Thank you.
I think that gives a really good idea of the different pressures and different circumstances of all these different journals. I'll just say something about, I edit the Journal of Chinese Medicine. Hope you're familiar with it. We're 47 years in. Peter Dedman, who's next door teaching Qigong, started it. And I've edited it for almost 20 now. And we've got a very simple remit, which is simply pragmatic clinical utility. So if an article is going to help practitioners in clinic, it can be published. If it doesn't, it won't get in. So, we can get a little bit of philosophical meanderings in East Asian philosophy, for instance. If it doesn't end up in clinic, we tend not to publish it. There are other journals that publish those kind of articles. But it's quite broad, the articles we publish. So from very abstract poetic, there's one we're on issue 141, which comes out in June. It should pretty much be landing on doormats. And we're still print, which is to be celebrated, but potentially problematic. But we do sometimes physio style or sort of orthopedic acupuncture, more esoteric, abstract approaches to acupuncture, very kind of qi-based, interviews, literature reviews, and a very small amount of primary research, but very small. Because, for people that have taken the effort to do a clinical trial, arguably they're better off trying to get it in a journal like Mike's because it faces so many different people rather than just facing us lot, So in the words of Volker yesterday, the JCM is kind of proud to be a minestrone. It's quite broad. We're not indexed because simply put, a lot of articles would not see the light of day if that was the case. And one of the USPs of the JCM is we give a lot of editorial support. There's me, I've got a couple of sub-editors, but if a practitioner has an article but they're a brilliant practitioner, but they're not so good at writing or organizing their thoughts, we can help them get it to publication. We're not officially peer-reviewed either. We are unofficially peer-reviewed, which means that I'll reach out to experts in a field when I don't know, when I can't judge an article. So recently we had an article written by a group of Italian doctors about, is a literature review on autism and acupuncture. And I sent it to someone who I know is an expert in this field and is autistic, who pointed out that a lot of the language being used was not, what's the word, like autism positive language. They reviewed it, changed it. It's now a great article. It's coming out in the next journal. We also do news, the latest news, all about East Asian medicine. Anything like acupuncture research, herbal, qigong, tai chi, and so on. And we're free. I mean, we're commercial in a sense, so we're not tied to a membership. And it's, but we are tied to the fact that people want to read it and they're going to pay for it. So, it's an opportunity and a potential problem. So that's the JCM.
When you said you were free, you mean free to...
Free to do what we like, in terms of, like, literally...
Not free to read.
We don't have, criteria that are limiting, other than the one I shared at the beginning, which is if it helps you to practice acupuncture, Chinese medicine, come and publish. So that's the intros. Have we got any burning questions before we go on to just think about the big picture stuff? If you can use the mic and also speak into the mic, it would be help everyone hear it.
Yeah, this is a question for Jasmine.
Yep.
And I just wonder, because you mentioned that you're particularly looking also at the traditions of East Asian medicine, not just CCM, but have you ever considered changing the name?
This has been, should I take a, yeah. Yes, we have. At the time when we first started talking about creating EJOM, this was in 1992, and the first issue came out in 93. And at that time, the term Oriental did not have the connotations that it now has. And so what we understood as Oriental at that time was in opposition to Occidental, so it was about where it was and so on. And of course, it's a much more loaded political term now. And so it's always a very difficult thing contemplating name change, because you have a brand and people recognize you by your brand name. And so making the change is always on the cards, and yet we haven't quite decided what that might be. But it's certainly something that we are thinking about. This might be the perfect time, because we're going into the transition into the BACC back home, in a sense. So that is a discussion to be had with the wider group that we have now within the BACC, because it will be much more clearly flagshipped by them. So yes, we have. To answer your question, have I answered it?
Yes, you have. I suppose it's always a trouble with the acronym as EJOM. It doesn't sound as good as EJOM, but...
Yes, I know. There's all that. I mean, we've taken a number of different over the years in our back pocket, a few other domain names, which we've kind of kept going, but they do still all, have EJOM really in their title. But nonetheless, I mean, that we have been thinking about it for quite a while.
Thank you. Forgive my naivety. I just wondered if the panel could say a little bit more about the process of indexing and peer review, and what that means, and the mechanism, and why you would and would not want to do it.
Thanks for the question. Can we park that, because we are going to get onto that. We're definitely doing that. It's an interesting area. Okay, so we'll move on for now. Why do journals matter? Why do these journals matter, Wu Di?
Well, I think that's exactly what I said at the very beginning. And for, I think different journals serve different audience, different readers. For my journal, our journal, I think serve our members. They need identity. They need a kind of belonging. they need to. That's I think the most important thing we worry about. That's also maybe later for about indexing or not indexed. It's all depend on what you want the journal, lead the journal, what the direction is. You want it more recognized by wide audience, or you want to recognize by your members. Yeah.
Any other panel members want to take that one on?
Well, I'd like to say, I suppose, a bit about EJOM because it is funded by BACSI members. There's always been a feeling, because we were 5 associations that came together, that we would need to be able to publish a reflection of the interests of the membership. And we knew that, you know, there were a large number of 5-element practitioners. There were people that were into stems and branches. There were TCM practitioners. There were people that were interested in research, and so on. So a very broad mix. And we were always aware that we had to, that there was an obligation on us to meet that need. Because it was also a way of trying to unify the profession. If in fact we had produced this common journal and then left one constituent out, that wouldn't have served the purpose of the journal. So it was very important to create a home in very much the same way as Wudi is saying for his journal, for us to create the BACSI. In fact, you know, it was the two organizations, the BAB and EJOM, both precursors to the BACSI, of the different groups working together that helped create the BACSI, made it possible for us to see that it was quite possible to work together. We didn't have to retreat into tribalism. We didn't have to pit ourselves against each other. We were all able to learn from each other, hopefully, and create a unified profession but maintain the diversity. It was a really important concept for us.
That's interesting, because that's 2 journals that have this kind of unifying community aspect to them. Mike, what do you have a perspective on not just why journals matter, but why they're important? You know, why they're important overall.
I guess when we started, our journal was very much like that. It was serving a community, but because the community came from the wider medical field, where there were lots of journals and there seemed to be a clear trajectory, I think that's maybe what happened. There were people around the edges going, "Oh, you need to be a bit more rigorous about what you're publishing. I don't like seeing that in, you know, that type of paper." And so there was pressures from people, and they might be people in big institutions, you know, orthodox institutions, who happen to have a bit of an interest in acupuncture. And so there was a general, the membership weren't pushing necessarily, but there were some key figures who were pushing for that trajectory. And so now we don't look anything like we did when...
Aren't you more rigorous than ever?
Yes, I think so, probably, but it's hard to compete in the world of medical journals when you're a specialist journal. So, you know, we have an impact factor now, but it's, you know, it could be bigger.
Yes, but for acupuncture, it's quite good. I mean, you know.
Well, it's the top.
Yes, exactly.
It's the top one in that. If you look narrowly in that field, but the whole world of publishing has changed so much in that time.
Stephen?
Yeah, I think the fundamental purpose of any journal is to be transmitting information to someone. And in the case of most of our journals, it's transmitting through our membership, and like everyone said, creating a community. In the case of the RCHM journal, I think it serves a particular niche function because it's doing something different to what a lot of the peer-reviewed sort of scientific journals, which you can get lots of information about herbal medicine from. What we tend to publish is something that is perhaps more practical and of interest to our membership, and varies across the board, from things like some reviews of some of the scientific literature to things like translation pieces of some classical texts. through to things like updates on the political landscape, and even things like the botany of growing the herbs and things in the UK, which are not something that you're likely to find in scientific journals, at least not without being a professional botanist and searching very hard to try and find this. So that's really what I think our journal does, is it creates a space for the community to communicate with each other and take some of the ideas from the specialists that we have and translate them into something which the membership can use.
Okay, yeah, got it, thanks. All right, let's talk about the elephant in the room, and just look under the bonnet of journals to, indexing an impact factor and peer review. And I was chatting to Mike earlier, and I'm just fascinated by the complexity and the hugeness of this process. So could you just tell us what it's like, what it involves?
I'm not really sure exactly. When I took over, we weren't indexed. We were indexed. So indexing is about lists of journals. So there are various databases that list people. So you say you're indexed on all sorts of different things. There's one that everybody was after, which is ICI, which gives you the impact factor. Clarivate now, they're not upfront and clear, but there are various things you need to achieve in order to get indexed by them. I've forgotten the list of things. We were getting pretty close, and we were jockeying for position to think, let's make a submission to them. Unbeknownst to me, the previous editor I took over from had already done it. So within the first year of me being editor, we were indexed. And I felt a bit bad in a way because I hadn't done it. But you basically apply, and you need certain criteria. You need to be regular. You have to come out when you say you're coming out. You can't afford to be late, like we occasionally used to be. Like, oh, let's miss this one for this year, because we've got nothing to put in it, when I'm trying to push the number of issues per year. So, but you have to be on time, as I remember one thing. Peer review is a requirement, and there are a whole string of other sort of requirements for it.
Do you pay for it?
No. No. I mean, not officially. I don't. What I mean is, I don't know if our previous editor took anyone out to dinner. I think it's highly unlikely because of the size of the organisations we're talking about. But no.
And do you get paid for it? Is there a...
No. Not directly, no. It's essentially...
It's all a bit
So when I say not directly, I mean if you have a high impact factor, you get different submissions. Your submissions change. As your impact factor goes up, you get better and better quality articles sent to you. So that's the advantage. It, depending on what your aim is. But yeah, so I mean, things are wholly different now. 25 years since I first looked at what was coming in. I mean, I think the first journal I was in charge of, I wrote half of it myself, which isn't really allowed. I mean, you get someone else to look it over, but look over those papers, yeah.
So, and what about the any of you, the editor's job, organisation? I know Mike has got a special bit of software that does all that, because peer review, sending it back and sending it to a peer reviewer, and then it coming back and it needs revisions, and that's just one article. So.
Yeah. I don't own that software. That's Manuscript Central. It's called Scholar One to us, but lots of journals use the same system. There are different systems. That's probably the most commonly used one. I mean, it doesn't do everything for you, but it does a lot for you. It suggests peer reviewers. Obviously the manuscript is managed. It's tracked, and it's quite a complicated system to get used to using. David Carr is our editor-in-chief. I've taken over as of a few weeks ago, unfortunately, as he has to step down. And he's training me in this system now. And I'm amazed because he's been doing all the work the whole time, despite the fact I saw every paper in the journal. I only saw them after all the work had been done, at the very end. And now I see all the stuff he has to do. It's colossal, incredible. And my first paper, I thought, okay, this is a good one, and we're going to have this one of the list that are coming in. And I was excited about it. And he said, okay, now this is your tutorial, pick peer reviewers. So I selected 10 peer reviewers from the suggestions, and off it went. Nothing happened. And I got an email saying, you haven't got any peer reviewers yet. I'll go, okay, and I go in and look at the system, and they've all timed out, time expired. I have to invite another 10. And I think, God, I'm going to do this again. I'll just invite 20. So I invited 20. So then I got an email from David saying, you've invited 20 people to peer review that paper. What if half of them say yes? You can't invite that many in one go. I mean, you can, but don't. I wouldn't if I was you. And I'm now up to 40. And I have no peer reviewers. This is a really good paper. And I can't get anybody to peer review it. And David said, oh, don't worry. What do you think his record is? 160 to get 2 external peer reviewers for one paper. Part of the problem is the expansion of journals and the requirement for peer review. And if you have ever published anything in your life, your name is out there and you will be getting requests to peer review, amongst other things. You'll also be getting requests, watch out, from fake journals to write in the journals and, you know, requests and all that sort. David has got templates for every letter you could possibly imagine you want to write to an author.
Yeah.
And I just have to select them down on the list. He goes, oh, you select this one for this, this one for this, this one for this. And so there was a paper and I said, well, this is clearly not. So we publish case reports, but only as letters to the editor because of impact factor issues. Because we want to be able to publish case reports, but we don't want them to drag down our impact factor, so we publish them as letters. And they don't get picked up then as in the denominator. Numerator or denominator? Denominator, probably. Yeah.
The lower one.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Denominator, yeah. But there's limitations then. So he's got one that says, okay, fine, if you want to send us, it must be a letter. So maximum number of words, maximum number of references, maximum number of tables. And you just go tick, and it goes back. So this one I saw, I thought, okay, well, I'll just do that. And then they bounced it back within 2 days and resubmitted it, filling all the criteria. And then I went, now I feel guilty, David. I actually don't want to publish this. This wasn't something I was particularly enamored with. There isn't much acupuncture in it. It's more, you won't know what it is. It's more of this big proddy thing they're using, a big stick, a big black stick. I've never seen it before. And then a few needles around surrounding some dragon, and then a big black stick, mostly massage with a big black stick. I thought, not really, mainly acupuncture. And I should have just rejected it straight away. But instead I said, oh, it should be a case report, should be like this. And David said, yeah, see, no, something you've learned. Make the decision straight away. So there are all those type of things. Yeah. And then I can go into details, obviously, about if it's a clinical trial, there are certain things you need to check straight away in terms of registration, based on the Declaration of Helsinki and, you know, all that stuff. And we cannot publish if the first patient to be entered in the trial is prior to the date of registration. So you have to have registration, and then the first patient entered in the trial must be after that. And if that's not the case, we are not allowed to publish it. So you don't want to waste your time going through peer review, et cetera, and revisions if that hasn't been checked right at the beginning. If it's animal research, David has trained me to look for the method of euthanasia. If the method of euthanasia doesn't fulfill the ethical guidelines that we follow, we can't publish it. And so we have to bounce it straight away. Often that isn't stated. So there are special templates David set up for, you haven't said this, please resubmit with the details of euthanasia. And there's a whole complicated list depending on which animals are involved. I mean, I'm just learning this now. You're only allowed to use certain methods for certain animals. And some, you know, and so that sort of thing we have to check right at the beginning for any animal research.
Thank you. Yeah.
So how many peer-reviewed papers do you actually need to publish?
How many do we publish per year?
No, how many, so if you get a paper submitted, and obviously it needs peer reviewing, how many people do you need to peer review it in order for you to publish?
So you need 2 external peer reviewers for most original articles. You can have more. The big journals tend to have more. When I say the big journals, the big medical journals tend to use more because they can get more, because peer reviewers want to review for them. But they don't want to review for us. Not many do. We're not that, you need to have an impact factor of, at least 2 figures.
Can I say something about that? We are peer-reviewed, but ours is a much simpler process. Because as Mike has just described, doing it through this more formal process is a bit of a nightmare and quite complicated and not necessarily likely to bring the success that perhaps we would as a community want. So our peer reviewing is much smaller scale, in as much as one of the ways that we thought we would maybe find that easier to do was to theme each journal so that there would be a topic that, there would at least be 2 articles in each journal around. And that way we thought, first of all, we would be able to get submissions. Our submissions come in 2 different ways. We commission, and we also get non-solicited articles. If it's on the theme and we've solicited it, we have said, oh, I think so-and-so might be able to write an article on this, and you ask them whether they would be interested in doing so, then the editorial board itself, because we've solicited it and we know what the theme is, we tend to peer review amongst ourselves. And one person from the editorial board will work with a particular author as well. We choose to work with one author or several authors, and then we continue to work with them. If it's unsolicited, we generally send it out for external peer review. We have in the past sometimes been able to get 2, but most of the time we only manage 1. But we anonymize it both ways. Our community is too small, I think personally, to submit the names of anybody. So we anonymize the article, we anonymize the peer reviewer, the comments get sent back. An author obviously is free to take up the points raised or not. But what I would say in relation to the process of peer review is that the articles are far better for the process. They are really improved. Authors themselves have, a reluctance sometimes to take on the critique that has been, that their work has been subjected to. They can be very precious about their work. But nonetheless, with the support of the editorial board, you do have to nudge people into taking it seriously and cogently arguing why they have rejected a point that has been made. And if they can do that, well, then that's fine. Then we as an editorial team will be happy with the fact that, that is addressed. And then we would want that addressed in the article itself. So even if, they don't take it on board, they must somehow have covered it in some way to be able to offset that criticism. The issue of indexing is really complicated. And we've had the situation where I have solicited an article from an expert. In this case, I'm going to talk about one example, which was an oncologist who had studied Chinese medicine and who I'd first seen at a conference in the Netherlands, in fact, doing a talk on breast cancer. And I wrote to him and I said that I'd been really impressed with the work that he presented, and would he be interested in writing this up for EJOM? And I explained who we were, that we were more or less the journal of the BACC, that we, had 3,000 members, and we did this, and, blah, blah, blah. And he was very keen to write. And so he actually wrote an article on lung cancer, on his work with lung cancer. And he wrote it in conjunction with an author in the States. And it was quite difficult to put it together because, he was in China at the time, and this guy in the States, and trying to do the time zones. It was actually quite hard to get the thing together. And I was working with both of them to try and get this into shape and so on. So it got published, and he was thrilled that we'd published it, and he loved the way it looked in the journal and so on. And on the basis of this, having seen it in the journal and having worked with us, he offered to write another article for us, this time on obesity. And I said, that's great, because our next issue is going to be on diet. So thank you very much. Then, about a week or two later, he wrote back to me and said, I can't find my article on PubMed. Where is it? Right? And I said, well, actually, it isn't there, and you won't find it there. Well, he said to me, first of all, I'm going to withdraw my article on obesity. If I'm not on PubMed, I don't exist. That's how he saw it. I can't be found. And this was a researcher, this was a person that was really, really keen to get the work that he did with Chinese medicine and herbs in relation to lung cancer. And I said I was really sorry to hear that. I had never not indicated that we were on PubMed or not on PubMed. I just told him who we were. And he just said to me, I'll be really pleased to write for you again, once you're on PubMed. and that was it. And I now realize that, there will be articles that we won't get unless we are indexed. And I've come to accept that up to a point, because I think that indexing, as Mike has described, is actually quite a complex process. And in some ways, the whole process runs away from you. You don't control what it is you want. And we're very keen in EJOM to also support innovation, new ideas, new interconnections, working with how a profession, what it is to be a professional in a much more rounded sense. And I think that we still feel it's quite important that we own it and that we control it to some extent. And so that's why I'm not so worried about that now. We asked a number of our researchers who do write for us, like Stephen Birch and so on, what they thought of EJOM. Why do they write for us? And one of the interesting things that Stephen said was that as a researcher, he wouldn't submit a real research article to us because, he wants to get research money. He wants to be seen by particular groups of people out there. So he wouldn't write those kind of articles for us. But if he wanted to talk to us, his colleagues and the profession, he would choose EJOM first and foremost. And that was a choice. He knows where he has to publish. And the same is with Beverly de Valois and her work on cancer. She does the same thing. She writes a different article for us and a different article for where she needs to get her research published and where she needs to go. And I've come to live with that comfortably. Maybe over time, we may change that. But I think that in terms of the resources that we have and the community that I feel we serve, I think at the moment we are okay where we are until such time comes as it's not okay. And some nudging comes from elsewhere that has to be moved in a different direction.
Can I just reflect there about the different types of evidence that are being served by these different articles, different journals, and say a little bit, a defense of the case report. Chinese medicine has a huge history of case reports as a primary way of not just sharing information as like evidence, but like Ye Tianxia, his kind of methods were in his cases, so a way of teaching principles. And I recently watched, there's a great video on YouTube of the father of evidence-based medicine, talking of, he's gone full circle, N of 1 trials, because they tell you that that treatment works for that patient, and therefore he believes we should upend the hierarchy of evidence and have case reports at the top. And I'm really pointing this out because all of you here can potentially share with the wider community your work, your understanding, and move the profession on and support your fellow practitioners. So, yeah, case reports are, there's one case report that I often use as an example of when people say, I want to write a case report. And I told Marzin last night that he wrote this one on ulcerative colitis. It's a herbal one. And what he does is he takes 2 cases and he uses the specifics of the case to illustrate the principles of Chinese medicine in action. So the use of herbs, teaching about the understanding of Yang Ming, stopping bleeding. So it goes from the specific to the generic, and therefore you're not just reading it and saying, oh, Marzin's a good practitioner, he can treat ulcerative colitis. You come away with an understanding of ulcerative colitis and the Chinese medicine treatment of it and diagnosis of it.
Danny, who's the father? Oh, EBM father. There's a few.
Yeah. It's Gordon Geert.
Gordon Geert, right?
Yes.
Yeah. And when he says N of 1 trials, he might not be talking about pure case reports. So N of 1 trials can involve random selection of treatments in the same patient.
Sure.
I don't know whether he's talking about that. That's yeah. But I would like to encourage you, yes, to publish. Those of you who haven't or scared to, don't be. You have to do it one time. Peer review is terrible the first time you get it. Good job the journal was in America. Oh, I was turning the air blue with these people. Anyway, but it does improve. It nearly always improves the article. You just have to get over yourself. You have to do it once. Read someone's criticism of your paper. You have to do it once and get over it, and it's so much easier after that. The other thing I'd say to do is find a friend who's already done it, get their help, publish with someone else who's already published. Definitely the easiest way. And read the guidelines of the journal you're submitting to. You don't have to read everything because there's loads of text there, but you think, oh, what sort of paper am I trying to publish? You can skim down, just at least get the word count right. Otherwise, you're going to be bounced straight away, probably. Word counts and various things. They usually have all that written down. Aim and scope of the journal, and is it a category that you can fit? But if it's a case report, they're generally the easiest things to write because most of us have all got patients, and something funny happens and you think, oh, that's a bit unusual. I could write that up because everyone's unique and individual. But it does usually for a case report, it wants to be maybe something a bit different,
I just want to talk about AI and digital publishing. I'm not going to talk about it. You guys, maybe you. Why do we need journals in the information age where one question to a bot, you've got more information than you can perhaps deal with? Stephen Woody, I'd like to hear from you if possible on that.
Never thought of the question, to be honest.
Okay.
Yeah.
I don't know where.
You can do the next one.
So I think, journals still hold an important place in the age of AI for the simple reason that AI gets it wrong a lot. It hallucinates and it comes up with answers, and I don't think we can be relying on our information when it's just being made up out of the blue by an algorithm. So we do need people to actually be checking this actually giving us the real information. And even if AI gets better, it's not able to do the research itself. It's drawing from other published research. That's what AI does, is it just collates the information together. So we need people to be writing the right information for AI to be using.
I think that's the critical bit. Yeah, it gets its information from what's already out there. And you have to, it doesn't, I mean, it's now influencing what's going out there, of course. And so exactly how that's going to work, I'm not sure. But if you're using AI, and you need to be using it, then you obviously need to question it, and you need to follow up on the references. If it's a key conclusion you're going to use, check the references.
There are a lot of hallucination. Personally, I found what they call hallucination, they're lies, it's fake. They even name, sorry, thank you. I even found name of books, author, and even the page, and it was not existing. So I really, I became very worried about that. So
it's like drug side effects.
yes.
You know, if you want to use a drug, some drugs, yeah, pretty good. They can, but many of them come with side effects. And AI is a new sort of tool. It's incredibly useful, But that's one of the side effects. These are, and we're still not working out all of them, but you can sort of get used to some.
Yeah, we tried AI on cheese, and we said you can get red Leicester and the blue Luckin, and we said, what about the Swansea orange? Oh yes, you can do that. And it proceeded to invent cheeses. We got spat. Just thought, right, well, I don't know what this is, but I'm not doing this again.
Okay,
I remember quite a funny one, if you're familiar with the idea of the 8 strategies or the 8 methods, and I think I typed in to ask which classical author found it, and AI told me that it was Charlie Buck.
Oh yeah, he wrote the article.
He wrote an article on it, yeah.
Article. But one thing I wanted to... Oh, sorry.
So one of the things that we tend to use AI for in the clinic is we'll feed it the information, because I'm dyslexic, I'm dyspraxic, and it helps me to then reword it with all the keywords, with all the things, and I think it can be a tool that can be utilised for somebody who, like myself, has dyslexia, dyspraxia, to get a bit more grammatically correct, or to use the right language, because if you feed in the parameters as a person trying to write anything, you can use it as a tool to achieve things. So I think there is a place, but probably not to the extent of writing an article.
Can I have a show of hands? Who regularly reads a journal? And be honest, we won't be offended. Reads it, yeah? Most of you. I guess that's why you're here. You have to. Sorry, Kurt.
Yeah, I was going to say about AI. I think AI is a useful tool, obviously, but that's all it is. That's the first thing you need to remember. And the better your question, generally the better the response. However, question the response. Keep questioning the response, because you can do that. And it gets smarter. It actually admits it's wrong. It actually says, oh, sorry, yeah, I did get that wrong. You know, and corrects itself. So there are ways of using it a bit more intelligently. But one of the things that I personally feel about why you should read a journal and why you should actually go through a more complex set of arguments and discussion about something in greater depth is for your own sanity and the preservation of your own brain cells. I mean, I honestly believe, you know, that we are being rewired by the technologies that are being created. We are being rewired by a group of small group of people, the tech bros out there. I'm going to be really honest about what I feel about this, who, I mean, do you really want that inside your heads in some respects? I think that we need to constantly value being creative, being able to critique, being able to expand our visions, being able to look at a number of multiple perspectives at the same time without having to diss any one of them. You know, we need to be able to have that breadth, and that will come from reading a wide variety of journals, a wide variety of literature around your subject, not just to stick to, you know, Chinese medicine. Do read up what's going on in, you know, in other therapies. You know, broaden who you are, because who you are becomes what you can do and what kind of practitioner you can be. So, you know, read journals and, you know, use AI as, you know, as and when, but, you know, put it in its place.
Read journals. We've got 10 minutes left. We would have ended on that one because it's so good, but any more questions? Like, Mike helpfully gave some advice to prospective authors, but is there anything that you as potential authors want to ask or you're not sure about?
If you did want to submit, would you start with just giving an abstract and then having a conversation as to whether that's something one of you guys would be interested in having? Or
That's a pretty good start.
Yeah.
I mean, you know, if it's a good article, you could just write it, and it will get snapped up somewhere, I would think. But that's a good start if you don't want to potentially waste any time on it. Although it's a good practice, you know, it's good to do it anyway, right?
Yeah, it is, and I think I mean, most
CPD.
people who decide to write an article do realise that it's actually quite difficult. They think they know what they want to say, but when you actually have to put it into an article, it actually is quite hard. But the thing is, I think for most of us as members of our editorial boards, we are there to help, you know, as best we can, you know, because, you know, we're not experts, but we have done it a lot of times, you know, and so, you know, practice does make better.
Woody, did you have something you wanted to add?
Yeah, I think back to Danny's very first question, I think what the editor is doing. I think I don't know what other professional editors do, but for me, like a small organization, small journal to your 700 members, I think the most thing we do every day is to begging for papers. I think without papers, without contribution, there's nothing else we can do.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's
So you commission them, you ask people to write them?
Yes, we get paper from different channels. We invite some people to write on certain subject, and also some people are more active than others. They contribute papers, and also back to the journal indexed or not. You know, we have a quite large pool of people who can potentially write papers. You know, many of ATCM members are Chinese. They are Chinese education background. Many of them know many people in China. Some of them are very famous, and they are famous professors, doctors. They have hundreds of papers. But when you invite them to write papers for you, the first question they ask you, are you indexed?
Yeah.
Yeah, and what your impact factor is. So but if you, that's back to my comment earlier, you know, whether you make all your effort to please authors to recognize you, to write paper for you, or at the end of the day, the paper they submitted to you is all from evidence-based research and all the very fancy research, and your member are not interested.
Mm.
Yeah, so that's really a question, really a balance you need to consider.
It reminds me of some years ago, there was these huge German trials, the Gerac trials on back pain, where basically it was another trial that says shams pretty much the same as Verum acupuncture. And so as an acupuncturist, it really left one nonplussed about the use of it in the clinic. And I would contrast that with, we had an article written for us by a guy, Whitfield Reeves, who's he's very traditional, but he's kind of orthopedic. He's a musculoskeletal guy in the States. and it was on back pain, and it was kind of a protocol. I'm not a huge fan of protocols, but my God, it works. It's basically Yao Yan, gallbladder 30. Don't really bother so much with the Huatou points. I mean, it's because he's done it 1,000 times. He knows that it works really well. It was QL muscle, release that, release the glutes and so on. It works really well. And for me, that kind of an article, you can take it into clinic and research it in a different way to the way you can take in a list of, that has been across a whole other population, because it's been tried and tested. Those huge trials, it really didn't work that well. Actually, it worked okay, but not better than sham.
Well, I did write a review paper on all of those trials, and some of them are incredibly useful because they were the ARC trials. Yes. Acupuncture and routine care was part of that whole Modell Vorhaben Acupuncture, where they had in several conditions over 10,000 patients in the active treatment arm, and the control for those was waiting list for 3 months. And then those patients got treated. So it was a pragmatic approach. And of course, NICE tends to ignore it completely. But massive data set showing what it's like to add acupuncture to usual care as opposed to wait for 3 months. Highly significantly positive, but you can measure. So you can use them. How good are the Germans, basically? That's how I say. How good are the German acupuncturists? Look at my clinic data. How good am I? And then I compare it directly across. It's really useful data because it's huge and prospective, and 10, 12, 15,000 patients in each of these trials. Yes, there were problems with the sham-controlled ones. They were just learning about it. They had to take the first fall of realizing. But the GERAC trials had a conventional care comparison, and sham acupuncture was nearly always better than that.
Yes.
So in the back pain, sham acupuncture was 50% better than conventional care in Germany, which isn't like conventional care here. It was active conventional care. People were being touched and given drugs and seen by physicians regularly. And sham acupuncture was better.
So have acupuncture is the message.
Well, have sham acupuncture. Yeah, have real or sham acupuncture. But sham acupuncture involved needling in those trials. Yeah, now it's changed. So you have to remind ChatGPT or whatever. You have to remind it to look and see what sort of sham was being used instead of just saying all shams the same.
So we've just got a couple of minutes left. Let's have your question.
I really appreciate meeting you all today and listening to you. I feel a bit stuck because I've done a couple of. I'm not a researcher, but I've done two sort of in my mind research-based sort of trials in my local area. One with a neurological group doing online acupressure, and another sort of 5 Palms Qigong group separately. And I've used those sort of standard forms where you get people to, fill them in before and after, and then some sort of quantitative reviews. But I've just got all this data, and because I'm not a researcher, I feel it's just there, and I'm sort of stuck. So if I wrote something up, but I just think it's like the statistical stuff or using, I because I'm not part of the university either now, I'm like, I don't know, what would you do with that? With this information, because it's worth putting it into something, I think,
That's where you need to find a friend.
I was going to say exactly the same thing.
Where you need to find a friend and then check. And you just need to check the details, obviously, of how you've done that research. And most important is the ethics issues. So some journals may I know it's not a trial as such,
it's just like a local.
But you need to make sure you write it up as if it's surface evaluation, something like that, a type of audit. Yeah, as soon as you say, oh, this is a prospective trial, which it could be described as, before and after, they're going to want ethics. So you do have to you have to be careful how you describe it. Yes, you should write up your data, but just be careful how you describe it in the first place.
So you're her new best friend.
I had an article that I wrote that they didn't like my research method. It was very qualitative, so it wasn't accepted because it was qualitative methodology. So I had to write it as research notes. Yeah, and that's how they got around it. So it wasn't a piece of research; it was research notes. But as far as I was concerned, it was a piece of research. But so there are ways you can do it. Yeah?
Right.
So
It was just sharing.
yeah, so it was research notes.
I think it was.
You could submit it to eJob, written up. You could, we support budding researchers, but we use people like Mike as peer reviewers. So there's a way.
I'm really sorry. We've gone over time, and I think people have trains and so on. Thank you all so much for coming. Thanks to our panel.